Hey folks, this is Nick from First Coast Math Clinic. In this video, we're going to answer the question, how do we find the area and circumference of circles? So if you're struggling with finding the area and circumference of circles, this is a good video to check out. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by just looking at a circle and identifying the diameter and radius, and then I'll give you the area and circumference formulas that we're going to work with. And then we're going to get into a couple examples. So we'll find the area and circumference. If our radius is 4 and our diameter is 20, I'm going to show you how to find the exact and approximate area and circumference. And then we're going to work backwards. So given the area, I'll show you how to find the circumference, and then we'll get into an application problem with example number 4. All right, let's get into it. All right, so before we get into any calculating, let's just review some basic terms, right? So we have our circle here. So the distance from the center of the circle to a point on the circle, that's our radius. So we'll call that R. The distance from one endpoint to another endpoint on the circle that passes through the center, that's our diameter. So we'll call that D. And the diameter is twice the distance of the radius. So if our radius is 4 inches, our diameter is going to be 8 inches. All right. So let's get into our formulas now, right? So if we're looking for area, our area formula is going to be pi times the radius squared. And we're going to talk more about pi when we actually do our calculations. Now, area specifically is the amount of space inside this circle. So if you're thinking of a pizza, right, think about the amount of actual like physical like pizza there is compared to circumference. Circumference, our formula is 2 times pi times the radius, or instead of having 2 times the radius, well, we know twice the radius is equal to the diameter, so we can replace 2 times the radius with just the diameter times pi. So there's two different formulas we could use: 2 times pi times radius, or just diameter times pi. Now for circumference, circumference is basically just the distance around our circle. So again, thinking of a pizza, think of, hopefully I can trace over this a little better. Think of like the crust on the pizza. So what's the distance if you're measuring like the crust around the pizza? So let's start by finding our area. And let's use the measure we have here. So our radius is 4 inches. So using our area formula, area equals pi times the radius squared. We can replace that radius with 4. So area equals pi times 4 to the second power. 4 to the second power is 16. So our answer is 16 pi. Now, including our label or units, this is inches. So we want inches squared because we're finding area. So our units are going to be squared when we're finding area. Now, this is our exact answer. We could also find the approximate answer. We're using the symbol for pi here. Pi, we know, is approximately 3.14. Now there's pi continues on after that, 3.14159, and continues. But for our purposes, we could use 3.14. So to find my approximate value, and again, this is the approximate value because we're rounding pi, and whenever we round, we're finding our approximate value. So we'll do 16 times 3.14, and 16 times 3.14 is going to give us 50.24. Again, our label is going to be inches squared. Okay, so we've got two answers for our area, 16 pi. So here our answer is in terms of pi. That's our exact answer. Here we multiplied by 3.14 and found the approximate answer for our area. All right, let's find our circumference. So circumference formula, let's get rid of this. And I'm going to use 2 times pi times the radius for circumference. And we know our radius again is 4. So 2 times pi times 4. So our exact circumference is going to be 8 pi, and our label is inches. Now, circumference is just a linear measure, right? It's not two-dimensional, so we don't have to include like a squared here on the inches. So let me get rid of that. So just 8 pi inches. So that's our exact answer. Now, if we want to find the approximate, do the same thing. We're going to use the value 3.14 for pi. So our circumference is going to equal 8 times 3.14. And we get 25.12 inches as our circumference. So again, we've got our exact circumference here and our approximate circumference here. Okay, so again, the exact gives us a little bit more, it makes a little bit more sense if we're talking about an exact measure, because if you're giving somebody a distance, you're going to say like 50.24 inches compared to 16 pi inches, and 52.12 inches compared to 8 pi inches. So that's why this is our, we kind of multiply this out, and this makes a little bit more sense in context. We can make, this makes a little bit more sense compared to just 8 pi inches, okay? All right, so let's get into some examples where we calculate area and calculate circumference of circles. So for example, 2, our diameter is 20. So if our diameter is 20, our radius has to be half that, 10. And we'll just include the label inches again. So 20 inches and 10 inches. So if we're labeling that on our circle, then we've got 10 inches here. And this entire distance here is 20 inches. And let's start by finding our area. So we've got pi times our radius, which is 10 squared. 10 squared is going to be 100. So we'll have 100 times pi, and then our label is going to be inches squared. So again, this is our exact. Now, if we want to find the approximate, we could take 100, multiply it by 3.14, and we'll get 314 inches squared, and this is our approximate area. Now for our circumference is 2, and I'm going to use I'm going to use d times pi, since we're given the diameter right here, and we get to substitute that right in. So our circumference is equal to 20 pi inches. All right, so that's our exact answer. So our exact area is right here. The exact circumference is right here. If I want to find the approximate, we can take 20, multiply it by 3.14, and we get 62.8 inches as our circumference. All right, let's get into example number 3. So for example number 3, we know the area is 144 pi, and I'll include let's include a label here. Let's say this is feet squared. We want to find the circumference. So let's work backwards. We know that to find our circumference, if we knew the radius, right? If we knew our value of r here in this circle, we could figure out the circumference, right? So let's work backwards, use our area and our area formula to figure out our circumference. So we know our area formula is pi times our radius squared, and we know our area is 144 pi. So we can replace our value of a, our area, with 144 pi. So let's do that on our next step. So we'll have 144 pi equals pi times the radius squared. And let's solve this for r. And once we solve for r, we could figure out our circumference, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is let's divide by pi and divide by pi. Pi's cancel out and cancel out. And we've got 144. So 144 equals r squared. I'm going to take the square root and square root. So the square root of 144 is going to be positive 12 and negative 12. Now, if we think about this though, right, we're dealing with a physical distance, right? So which of these doesn't make sense if we're dealing with a physical distance? The negative answer doesn't make sense. It's got to be a positive answer. So our radius has to be positive 12, meaning our diameter has to be twice that, 24. So we figured out our radius. Radius is equal to 12, and our unit is feet, so 12 feet. So let's use that to find our circumference. So circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. So circumference is 2 times pi times 12, or 24 pi feet. Again, we don't have to square it because circumference is a linear measure, so that's our exact. If we want to find the approximate, you can take the 24, multiply it by 3.14, and we get 75.36 feet for our approximate circumference. Okay, so our exact circumference is right here. Approximate circumference is right here. All right, let's get into one more application example with area and circumference. All right, so for number 4, the diameter of a bike tire is 20 inches. How many rotations will a tire make during a 1-mile trip? So there's some information we need here. So let's draw this out and get all the information that we need for this problem. All right, so here's our bike tire. Here's the diameter. And that diameter is 20 inches. How many rotations will the tire make during a 1-mile trip? And I should include my label, so that's inches. Now, first thing you want to figure out is, are we talking about area or are we talking about circumference? Now, for rotation, well, rotation is like the distance around the bike tire. So if we're referring to distance around the bike tire, that's going to be circumference, right? So we're going to use our formula 2 times pi times r, or diameter times pi. All right, so we're not going to need our area formula here. We're just going to work with our circumference formula. So let's start maybe by figuring out the circumference of our tire if we know the diameter is 20, because that's the information we have. We know the diameter of a bike tire is 20 inches, right? So we can replace d with 20, so our circumference is 20 pi inches. Since we're figuring out the actual distance, let's find the approximate value here. So I'm going to multiply 20 times 3.14 So our circumference is going to be 62.8 inches. So that should be so the circumference of our tire, the distance around our tire, is 62.8 inches. So in one complete revolution of our bike tire, we're traveling 62.8 inches. All right. Well, we want to know if we go 1 mile, we take a 1 mile trip, how many revolutions are we making? Well, so to do that, we need to convert miles to inches. So let's do our conversions. So I'm going to do a couple conversions here. We know that 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. Right? So we already know that, well, if you have 1 mile, we have 5,280 feet. And we know that, well, each foot is 12 inches. So we can multiply 5,280 by 12 over 1 foot. Our unit, feet and feet cancel out. So we're left with 1 inch. And now when we multiply 5,280 by 12, we're left with 63,360 inches. All right, so our 1 mile trip, we're traveling 63,360 inches. Okay? So we know how many inches we're traveling. We know that each rotation takes us 62.8 inches. What we need to figure out is, well, how many rotations are we making in that trip? So if we want to figure out, well, how many rotations, how many 62.8 inch rotations are in 63,360, what operation is that? Well, that's division. I want to figure out how many of these, how many 62.8 inch rotations are in this total trip we need to divide. So let's divide our 63,360 inches by 62.8 inches. And I'm going to round that to the nearest tenth. So it's going to be 1,008.9 rotations. All right. So we're dividing the total number of inches by the inches per rotation. So each rotation we travel 62.8 inches. Divide those two out and we get 1,008.9 rotations. So this is going to be our final answer here. All right. All right, well, I hope this video helped you guys understand area and circumference of circles a little bit more. If you want to review this topic in particular, unit conversions, I'm going to post a link to a video I made specifically on unit conversions at the end of this video. You could check that out. And if you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure if you want to see some additional topics made, videos on additional topics, you can leave those in the comments. Again, if you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This is Nick from First Coast Math Clinic.